Shalom, my dear friends. And today we continue with our studies in Kohelet from where we left off in our last session in chapter 7. And this section of Kohelet is made up of many different mashalim, many different proverbs and metaphors and ideas, all of which surround the themes that we have already seen in the earlier chapters. And the division of the chapters in the traditional English Bibles is somewhat arbitrary and does not correspond to any section breaks in the text as it is written in the Hebrew parchments. And there are sections where there are several verses that go on a common theme, a common mashal. There are others where there are very memorable turns of phrase and sometimes expressing ideas that we seem already to have encountered in somewhat different wording. And this is the case with the first verse that we will be looking at today in chapter 7, going now from verse 23. Kol zoi nisisi v'chochmo omarti echkommo v'hi rachoiko mimeni. All this I have tried and tested with wisdom, and I said, yes, let me become wise, let me seek to attain the very summit of wisdom, and yet it is still far from me. This verse is quite famous in the way that it is dashed and explained by our sages, that King Solomon had questions about the laws of the ashes of the red heifer, which are used to purify those who have become defiled from contact with the dead. And one of the particular questions he had is, how could it be that when a person who is tameh met, who's defiled by the dead, has the waters with the ashes of the red heifer sprinkled, that person becomes tahor, it becomes pure, and yet a person who simply touches the ashes of the red heifer without intending to be purified by them, that person becomes impure. Very many mysteries in this verse, and no matter how far King Solomon sought to work out all these questions through his deep Torah wisdom, it was always still elusive, still further away than ever before. And Rashi tells us in explaining this verse 23 of chapter 7 that it relates both to the previous verses where we were talking about the wise way to relate with proper humility before God Almighty, and not to get upset when too many people, when other people start putting one down with their words, even people one considers to be inferior. Is it not the case that we have done the same to other people? And he's summing all this up and saying, I've tested all this with wisdom, and also I'm going to tell you the same thing about the mysteries of the coming verses. So let's go now to verse 24. Rachok ma shehoyo v'amoik amoik mi yimtso'enu. Well, here we will gain help from our Targum Yonatan on verse 24. Ho kvar israchak mibnei nosho lemida kol ma dehavo min yome almo. It is indeed much distanced from the children of men to know everything that was from the days of the universe, the days of creation. That is to say, it is quite impossible to really understand Maaseh Bereshit, the mysteries of how this material world was brought into existence by the Supreme God who's beyond all material existence. V'roz yom moiso, another secret that is so distant from human beings is the secret of the day of death. V'roz yom deyese malka Mashiach, and likewise the day when King Moshiach will come to the world. Manhu yishkachine b'chochmasa, who could possibly find out the secret of all this through wisdom? Well, our Kabbalistic sages do believe that by the contemplation of the great Chacham, the great sage, on the mysteries of the Sfirot, which come out from the various divine names, it is indeed possible to see how the future has been foreordained. But this is a very far distant mystery. So coming now to verse 25. Saboisi ani velibi lo das velo sur uvakesh chochmo v'cheshbon velo das resha kesel v'hasichlus hoilelus. King Solomon really went all around everywhere in his mind and soul to seek out the mysteries of the creation. Here on our verse, I circled it around, saboisi, an expression of going all over the place, saviv. I went all around in my heart too to find out, to investigate, to seek out this wisdom and the calculation and to understand the wickedness and madness, foolishness, folly and emptiness. So here Rashi will help us with understanding verse 25. Saboisi lodas v'losu levakesh chochmo porosho poro adumo. What Solomon was seeking out was the mystery of how the red heifer, the portion of the red heifer in the Torah, Deuteronomy, Numbers chapter 18, how this contains the mysteries of freedom from servitude to death. V'cheshbon keitza geula, the other thing that he searched out was the calculation of the end of the end of the redemption that will come at the end. We likewise see that Daniel was very involved in calculating the end of the exile and the final redemption, but that is completely closed up, and this also was Solomon's occupation, trying to understand this. And also he wanted, on the other side, the side of unholiness, Lodas resha kesel, to understand the wickedness and folly. Lamod al seif dato shel epicursus. He wanted to understand, to get to the bottom, the very end of the view, the worldview, the philosophy of Epicurus, the denial of God, heresy, materialism, vesichlus hoilelus, the folly of emptiness, ma'ulbav mashuma mshebo, all the folly that is and the devastation that is contained in that pathway. Well, Rabbi Nachman, in teaching 64 of the first part of Likutei Moharan, throws light on the meaning of what Solomon was involved in, when Rabbi Nachman explains there that the mission of the true tzaddik is to, in contrast to all of the other members of the people of Israel, the true tzaddik has specifically go into the mysteries of the chalal panui, the empty space, the vacated space from which God has, as it were, vacuumed out godliness, and that is the source of the possibility of interpreting this universe as a mere chance agglomeration of atoms or whatever. And Solomon likewise wanted to get to the bottom of this. And now we come to a section that will perhaps be offensive to some members of the human race. Solomon's conclusion, verse 26, what he wanted to get to the bottom of was this folly, and in the coming verse he starts speaking about the terrible bitterness of some kind of woman. So before we all get offended by this, let's first examine the pshat of the Hebrew verse and consider what this verse actually means. Umoitze ani mar mimoves eso isho asher hi metzuidim v'charomim libo asurim meyodeho toiv lifnei Elohim yimolet mimeno v'choite yelochet bo. Umoitze ani mar mimoves, I find bitter than death. Eso isho asher hi metzuidim v'charomim. We really need to carefully look at the cantillation, the trope of this verse, where the notes of the cantillation on the word isho show that this word isho is joined to the following phrase: isho asher hi mitzoidim. It's not every woman that is more bitter than death. It is the particular woman that is all traps and all kinds of different sneers and traps. Libo, that is, the traps are in her heart. Asurim yodeho, her hands are asurim, they are in fetters, they are bound up. Tov lifnehu Elohim, whoever is good before God, Yimolet mimena, will be saved from her. V'chite yelochet bo, however, a sinner will get trapped by her. Well, now, according to the pshat, the interpretation of the Targum, we are indeed here talking about a woman that is dangerous for a male in the simple sense of the term. I find something that is more bitter for a person than the bitterness of the day of death. There's a woman who practices, who acts in a way that causes excessive pressure and tribulation to her husband. There are snares and traps in her heart. Kfison yedoho, her hands are tied up. Taki, in order not to work with them, she abstains from any kind of genuine work contribution to the household. Taki in Kodam Hashem gevadi yaftir yose beget pturin. The best course before the Lord is for a man to divorce her, to send her away with a bill of divorcement, the get, the document of the divorce, and he will therefore be saved from her. And the sinner, one who is sinful before the Lord, is the person that will marry such a woman and will then be caught in her fornications. Well, now, from the earlier chapters of the book of Proverbs, the first nine chapters of Proverbs are introduction to all of the ensuing one-verse proverbs that follow in the bulk of the book from chapter 10 onwards, practically towards the end of the book, and particularly in the later chapters of this opening discourse, chapters 6, 7, 8, we get repeated warnings against this a woman who ensnares the unwitting. And according to all of our commentators, this woman is actually the very philosophy that was alluded to in the previous verse, Epicurus, the heresy, the philosophy that leads to the denial of God. And the same point is made in Rashi here in our verse. I find more better than death that this woman, this phenomenon is worse than 10 difficult things that were created in the world, as are enumerated in the Talmud, Bava Basra, the chapter of the partners. Okoshe bimeno eso isha, harder than all of them is this isha zu aminus. This refers to heresy. Haromim libo, there's snares in her heart, explains Rashi. These are the traps that net people when they're exposed to this heretical philosophy, and is so alluring that it's impossible to stay clear of it, not to have one's mind affected, or shall we say infected, by this virus of just not believing that there is a higher power that created all this amazing universe. Rashi explaining the expression asurim yodeho, her hands are bound, mishe echzika v'adam areu cheniksha b'kishuri avoisos. When she takes hold of a person, that person is as one bound by the bonds of thick ropes. Asurim, Rashi explains grammatically this word asurim, which one might have thought is an adjective describing yodeha, her hands, but Rashi explains that this is actually a noun. Bonds are, knots are her hands. That's how she grips the person, as Rabbi Nachman explains in Torah 64 of Likutei Moharan Part 1, that these knots that make her so kasher, so hard, are the kushiyot, the impossible conundra that the philosophers raise. How can we have free will, yet God knows what we're going to do, and many other similar conundra that are actually insoluble. And it's precisely with such kushiyot, such impossible questions, that this strange woman holds people in her trap. Going now to verse 27 of chapter 4. Ra'ei ze motzosi, see, this have I found. Omra Kohelet, states or said Kohelet. Achas le'achas, limtzoi cheshbon, one to one, one to another, one by one, item by item, to find the cheshbon, find the calculation. Another particularly opaque verse of Kohelet. Before we even look at the meaning of the Kohelet, let's just note the fact here in the Hebrew text that Kohelet, which until now we have been understanding as the name for King Solomon, the one who gathered together the assemblers of the wise, here we find that this has a verse that is in the third person feminine, Omro Kohelet, and this is as opposed to the form of the verb found with Kohelet at the very beginning of the book. At the beginning of the book, we have the second verse, Havel Havolim Omar Koheles, Vanity of Vanities said Koheles, Omar Koheles, there with the third person masculine. Here we have the third person feminine, and this subtle shift is noted by Rashi and the other commentators who discuss its significance. It's actually, it comes to mean that Kohelet is here the personification of the ingathering of all kinds of wisdom, and that's why it is an abstract noun in the feminine. Alternatively, thus, as Rashi explains the feminine form, thus said the soul, the intelligent soul, gathering in the wisdom, Solomon's intelligent soul. Well, so far so good. What is actually meant by the main point of this verse? This is what I have found, says Kohelet, achas la'achas limtzo cheshbon, item to item, to find the calculation. Well, a rather interesting interpretation of the verse is found in Targum. Chazes dein oivedo de ishkochis amra koheles. This is the matter that I have found, says Kohelet, the Miskerei Shlomo Malkot Yisrael, which is the name given to King Solomon, the king of Israel. Kivenis Mazolayo Chado im Chavarto, the connecting together of the Mazalayo, or the planets, or the stars, one with its companion. Lemishkach cheshbon b'nei enosha, to find the calculation, the account of the children of men, ma ye'ei b'sof ehon, what will be at their end. This is apparently, according to Targum, referring to King Solomon's astrology. The word kivenis, which is Aramaic, would be related to the Hebrew word kavanah, which means directing or sending something in a direction. And here we are trying, according to King Solomon in astrology, to connect the dots, as it were, to connect the stars and the planets according to their positions. The Aramaic word kivnis actually has the connotation of a window, and in astrology the concept of the windows is an important concept. Now, there is indeed a Torah astrology, and this is set forth at length in the ancient work Sefer Yetzirah, attributed to Abraham, our father, and which King Solomon would certainly have had a copy of. It was handed down by tradition from those very ancient times, and it speaks about the three main active elements of creation: air, fire, and water. The 7 planets, and connected to the 7 days of the week, the 7 hours that circuit around the clock, and the 12 constellations of the zodiac, and their relationship with the 12 simple letters of the Hebrew alphabet. All of this is contained in Sefer Yetzirah, and certainly there were those outstanding sages who, from the side of holiness, sought to understand people's destinies through the teachings of Sefer Yetzirah. And this is not something which any amateur should dare to go into. This is something that we should be content to leave to the true Chachamim, and not to dabble and possibly cause ourselves pain and trouble by violating the Torah prohibition against directing our actions in relation to the settings of the stars. So now, looking at a more simple and direct explanation of this verse 27, let us look at Metzudat David, who, as always, gives us a plainer and more straightforward and more down-to-earth explanation. This is what I have found that refers to what we'll find at the end of this very verse. Amro Koheles, Amro Nefesh shel hamakabed sadeus amanagdois. This is what the soul of the Hebrew word nefesh is, a feminine word, and that's why it fits with the feminine form of the verb omro koheles, said the soul of the one gathering together contradictory opinions. King Solomon was seeking to bring together and to harmonize and synthesize apparently contradictory positions. Ve'omar ka'acher hamadaber, and he says it as if somebody else is speaking. In other words, King Solomon, although Solomon himself said this verse, he switches from the first person Ra'ezeh Motzosi. See, this I have found. Amro Kohelet, he slips into the third person, and thus is the way of the language of the Bible in several places, that it slips effortlessly from first person to third person. And what did he find? Achas la'achas limtzoi cheshbon ein limtzoi machsheves bino. You will not find the thought, the idea, any concept of true understanding, ki im laharich achas el achas, except by comparing one thing to another. Laharich dover el hafochoi, to compare one thing with its opposite. Ki oz yovin veyaskil eize yichshar, for then the person will understand, and he will have a deeper knowledge and perception of which of the two opposites is actually the preferable. That is to say, the very concept of bino, understanding, which is analytic reasoning, is a concept of comparing and contrasting one thing with another and trying to make deductions from one thing to another, as opposed to the concept of chokmah, which is comprehensive, holistic understanding. Bina, intelligence, needs to break things up, compare and contrast. It's the whole thought process of our Talmud, comparing one tradition with another and trying to understand where they are similar, where they differ, and which one we need to follow. Moving forward now to the following verse, verse 28. Asher od bikshon nafshi v'lo motzosi Adam echod me'elef motzosi ve'isha b'chol eile lo motzosi. Again, this apparently misogynistic approach of King Solomon, and yet we find that, according to our Tanakh, King Solomon loved all kinds of foreign women. He was, I think it's impossible for us to dare to call Solomon a romantic a philanderer or something like that. He was a person who sought out all of the different wisdoms. Those were the different women that he loved. He sought to get to the depth of all of the different forms of wisdom. And according to this verse, what exactly, who did he find and what was he looking for? Well, this verse again has been another typically opaque verse. I think so much of Kohelet is very opaque. Let us look at first of all at Targum on this verse. There was one other thing that yet my soul sought out. Velo ashkoches, but I didn't find the answer. Givar shalim v'zakai belo chivulo. To find somebody that is whole, perfect, complete, zakai, righteous, belo chivula, without any chavala, without any damage, without any corruption. Min yomed odom kadmu ad islid avrom tzadiko. You couldn't find such a righteous person from the days of the first man, the primordial Adam, until there was born Abraham the righteous. the Ishtakach Mahemon V'Zachai ben Elef Malchin de Isknoshu Lemevad Migdala de Babovel. Abraham alone was found to be faithful to God and righteous among 1,000 kings of the earth that all gathered in to construct the Tower of Babel. Ve'itasa b'chol ilein nesheyain demlachayo kesora le ashkochis. And one woman among all of those wives of those kings, I couldn't find any single one like Sarah. Well, now, a rather different direction in the interpretation of this verse is brought down to us in Rashi. Asher od bikshon nafshi, levad eli amurim lemalo, shebikashtim v'lo motzosim, besides all those above that I sought out and couldn't find them, biksha od nafshi, keshero v'noshim lo motzosi, ki chulon daton kala alein. I sought out to find one pure woman I couldn't find, for they're all light-headed. Adam echad me'elef motzoti. I did find one man out of 1,000. Well, here is a saying of our rabbis, elef nichnosim lamikro. You might have 1,000 young students, little boys, entering into the study of the Bible. The Chumash, the 5 books of Moses, followed by the Tanakh. Ein yotzim mehem le'atzliach, sheru'im le'mishno elo meo. There do not come out of this 1,000 more than 1/10, just 100 out of the 1,000 come out to be successful, to be able to grasp the Mishnah, the collection of the oral law. Those 1,000 who went into the study of the Mishnah, out of the 100 that went into the Mishnah, only 10 will actually be able to enter truly into the study of the Talmud. And out of those 10 that enter into the study of the Talmud successfully, only one of them will actually be successful enough to come to a stage where he will be able to deliver Torah decisions, Torah judgments. Only 1 out of 1,000 will reach the necessary level actually to be able to give Torah legal rulings. Quite a chilling statement, one which contradicts what is said in the age of King Hezekiah, where they made investigations from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south. They couldn't find a single child that did not have a perfect grasp of all the very subtle laws of purity and impurity that applied in the time of the temple. So it is possible to attain a higher rate of success. Unfortunately, this interpretation of the verse by Rashi in Kohelet provided a justification for rather narrow-minded teachers to ignore all of the students in their classes who they felt could not attain to the necessary level and would not succeed, and honor was given to the few who were successful in the Talmud, but little respect, honor, or value was given to those whose place was with the Mikra, the written Torah, or the Mishnah, the original collection of the oral law. And indeed, although King Solomon was so selective, we need to understand that each and every one has their value. And with that thought, let's go forward to the following verse, chapter 7, verse 29. Levad re'eze motzosi asher osoch Elohim es ha'odam yosher v'hemo vikshu cheshbonos rabim. Except, just look at this, the one thing, says Solomon, the one thing I did find is that God made man straight and just, but they were seeking a multitude of cheshbonos, of calculations, of bills, of reasoning, bills in the sense of charging people bills. Human beings are involved with all kinds of calculations in our actions, and this is the bottom line of this section. Let us look at verse 29 in the Targum. L'choid chazedei nashkoches diavad Hashem yos odam kadmo tokin kadmui v'zakrai. Except, just look at this one thing that I found, that the Lord God made the first man pure before him and righteous. V'chivyo v'chavo inehu atayu lemeichal min perayo de ilono de ochlin perioi chakim lemira ben tav levish. And it was the chivyo, the serpent, v'chavo, Adam's wife, Chavo, Eve, inu atayu, it was they that deceived him, the mechal min pirad ilon, to eat from the fruit of that tree, that those who eat of its fruits, they get wise to know between good and evil. V'golmu listakofo aloy yoim moiso. They caused the day of death to get the better of him. He became now subject to death, which he would not have been had he never eaten the fruit. And likewise to all the inhabitants of the